Welcome to the One Day at a Time Recovery Podcast, where my guests share their stories of addiction, how they recovered, and the tools and practices they use to stay sober now. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining me today.
Arlena, it's a pleasure.
I'm so excited to talk to you. I remember listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast where he was talking about the molecule of more and how that was the book he wished he would have written. And I was like, holy smokes, let me get this book. And of course, I always get the audio book, and I loved it because as somebody, I see everything through the lens of addiction recovery and personal growth and things like that. Behavior change. How do we feel better? I feel like at the end of the day, that's the purpose of all this recovery work, shall we say, is to change the way we feel, change our behavior, and be more intentional about our life experience. So I was so interested in absorbing everything about dopamine. Interviewed Dr. Anna Lemke. She wrote Dopamine Nation. Yeah,
She's a friend. Anna is wonderful. She endorsed the new
I
book,
saw
in
that.
fact. Yeah, Anna's
I
great.
saw
She's
that.
wonderful,
That was
wonderful
amazing.
lady.
I want to get her back on too because she wrote a workbook
Hmm.
for Dopamine Nation. So I love me workbooks. So you came out with Taming the Molecule of More. And your people reached out to me, and I was like, "Holy crap, Michael Long wants to talk to me." I was
Ah,
like,
I felt the same way about you. You're doing the Lord's work out here. It's good stuff.
Thank you. So I have I was telling you, I have like 2 pages of notes. I don't know how much we'll get through of all this, but maybe we could sort of start um, with the idea. I think people are confused about what dopamine is or does in the sense that is it motivation? Is it pleasure? How do you think of that? How would you square those two ideas?
Sure. Dopamine is all by itself in the universe of neurotransmitters, of brain chemicals. We have dopamine, which is all about anticipation. It doesn't make you feel good because you have something in your hands, or it tastes good, or it smells good, or it feels good. Has nothing. It's saying, wouldn't that probably taste good or feel good, or it's going to make you happy? That thing over there, go get it. There's no happiness associated with it. It's anticipation. All the others are consumatory. They take place in the here and now. In fact, that's what we call them, the here and now neurotransmitters. Every single one of them is about feeling something in the moment. But dopamine alone is about anticipation. And what it makes you want is what you don't have right now that you believe would make you happy.
That makes a lot of sense. That's like when you plan a vacation or like when I was planning my wedding a million years ago, it was like all the anticipation. That was like the best part because the actual day or the actual vacation goes by so fast. But it was
Yes,
like the anticipation.
it's an intense feeling.
Yeah.
And I'm going to use these words carefully. It's a good feeling, but it's not a happy feeling. It's not a satisfied feeling. It's a
Yeah.
feeling of want. And that's a good thing. The thing that I use, a wedding is such a good example. And I can't believe in the years I've been doing this that has never crossed my mind. That is the difference maybe between men and women. I don't know. I don't want to get in
Yeah.
trouble saying something like that, but
Oh no, no. I've been brainwashed to anticipate that day my entire life.
well, what I think of is kids at Christmas. The
Mm.
days and weeks, if you celebrate
Oh yeah,
Christmas, you know, those kids, oh, and even adults, I'm still that way.
for sure.
Wonder what's in those packages. That could be the thing I always wanted. It could be something I asked for. It could be something that my wife thought up that I'll want that I didn't even realize, but it's going to be great. But let's go back to the kids. Finally, the morning comes. They tear open the presents. They're so excited. What are they doing by the afternoon? Anything else? They're playing. They're playing with the boxes, pretending those boxes could be a spaceship or something. The
Oh.
anticipation of dopamine and the good feeling it gives you stops as soon as the thing becomes reality.
Oh, that is so bizarre. Yeah, in addiction recovery, when we talk about our experiences like at meetings and things like that, we often talk about wanting more. And it even shows up in my dreams. But I remember when I was drinking, there was like a switch that would get flipped, and all I wanted was more, to the extreme. And, I haven't drank or done drugs for 31 years, but I will still have dreams. Weed was my drug of choice. And in my dreams, I would take a bong hit and immediately I'm thinking about the next one. I don't experience the euphoria of actually being high. My brain is like already like the next one. And I was like that with my drinking.
You just explained better than a lot of people I've heard explain
Oh,
exactly what the feeling. Yeah, and I'm serious about that because when you said I didn't experience the euphoria, I just experienced the want the next thing. That's such an excellent description of what dopamine does. It tells you that thing is going to make you happy. Go get it. And as
yeah.
soon as you get there, bang, dopamine stops telling you that. It makes room for the euphoria, for the good feeling. The problem is, as you well know, that for people who are addicted, unless we can talk about substances, we can talk about behavior to some extent, but let's talk about substances. It
Okay.
takes more and more of a hit to get less and less pleasure. Now,
Yeah.
if you think about that for even a moment, it sounds like that ought to fix addiction, doesn't it? Because if something stops being pleasurable, you're probably going to quit doing it. But that's not what happens in addiction because you warp the craving part. It never, I'm sorry, you never touch the craving part. While the pleasure goes down, the craving remains. It doesn't get
Yeah.
touched. And so that's the thing that keeps us in addiction. The constant craving that we cannot touch, even though the pleasure is long, long past.
Yeah. Yeah. Even with alcohol, they say that, the experience of the alcohol only lasts like the good, like it's a feeling of relief for a lot of us. But that feeling of relief and, like the warm fuzzies only last for like 20 minutes and then you need to
Mhm.
consume more. Yeah, it's a vicious
Sure.
cycle. Why is it that this dopamine reward circuit is so different for people that are sort of prone to addiction as opposed, because some people can like take it or leave it. I have a sister-in-law, she'll drink half a glass of wine or something and be like, "Oh, I'm beginning to feel it," and I better put it down. I'm like, what is wrong with you?" That's
Well, of course, we're all different in the way our brain matter, our brain systems are constructed. Well,
yeah.
let's not say constructed, but let's say how they're different. It's sort of the way every Christmas tree is different. Every Christmas is a theme today. How about that, Arlene? Uh, every
Christmas in
Christmas tree
June.
is the same, and every Christmas tree is different, and
Yeah.
and every brain is the same, and every brain is different. So is there a reason we know in particular about why some people have this problem and some do not? No, we really don't know why. But what we do know is that anyone who uses a substance that is foreign to the brain and causes these systems to stretch their tolerance, shall we say, is probably going to have a problem because
Yeah.
the more often you do this, you ingest this substance, the more the more it takes to get there, as we said before,
Yeah.
the more it takes to get up to the feeling that you had before. You're changing the homeostasis, we call it, of a system. And so normal becomes up here, elevate. It takes that much more to hit that normal thing. So we stretch it by abusing the system.
Yeah.
And again, these are things that many people who are addicted know instinctually, then they know intellectually, but it's the fight that's the hard part. What I'm telling you
Yeah.
is not going to be the fix. What I'm telling you is to know how to choose a fix, how to deal with the fix. And that's what taming the molecule of more is about, especially when it comes to behavior. It's about particular things you can do in order to suppress, to uh, even take on head on the
Yeah.
challenge that dopamine presents, especially in modern life, because modern life's dopaminergic challenges are unique to modern life, very unique to modern life.
Yeah, we have a whole with social media and the phones and everything, we have a whole new variable that we've never dealt with before. But I
And
want
more things
to,
that flow from those too, I have to say, because we always go with phones, and of course I'm happy to talk about those and want to talk about those. But there are things about the pace of modern life that are changed by technology, and things that are changed by the moral structure of society that now lead us to have to deal with this dopamine problem in areas we didn't have to deal with it with this intensity before. And this has to do with long-term relationships, with dating, with other kinds of personal relationships. The fact that we can have friends at a distance now makes
Yeah.
us really have to re-examine what it means to be a friend and what a season of a friendship might be. These are all odd or unexpected artifacts of the modern age.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. We're dealing with a lot of different variables that weren't even dealing with like, 10, 20 years ago. I
You're
don't think our
right. You
human
got the number
brains,
exactly right.
yeah, we just weren't, our brains were not designed to defend against everything that's coming at us these days. I want to ask you, in the first book, The Molecule of More, there was this reoccurring expression or idea of reward prediction error. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and how it relates to things like maybe dysfunctional behaviors?
Sure, it's great. There are two little magic phrases. I wrote the first book with Dr. Dan Lieberman, who is a
Yeah.
30-year friend of mine, a psychiatrist, one of the best psychiatrists in the United States.
Mm.
And Dan and I wrote this for reasons we can get into later. But anyway, to get to your question, reward prediction error is one of two big ideas that if you grab onto those, you can understand dopamine a lot better. The other idea is mental time travel, and maybe we'll talk about that later.
Oh, I love that.
Reward prediction error is just what the name says. It is the surprise. It's a happy surprise. If I think I'm going to go to McDonald's and have a hamburger, and I go do that, there's no great thrill with that. But if I go to McDonald's and I'm going to buy a hamburger, and while I'm in line, I meet Bryan Cranston, star of Breaking
Breaking
Bad, as we were
Bad.
talking about before we turned on the mics. Well, that's a reward prediction error. I didn't expect to get that when I went to McDonald's. And if that happens a couple of times going to McDonald's where I meet celebrities, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is going to be good. This could actually be great. Now that's an extreme example, so I can make the more normal examples far more impactful. Dopamine thrives on, it acts on reward prediction error. And that is, I believe one thing is going to happen at this level of good, but in fact, it turns out to be this much better. And that's the thing that triggers it. Now, every, every, uh, every week, let's say you get a check at the end of the week, your paycheck, and let's dream big. Let's say, oh, I get $1,000 check every Friday from my boss. Well, $1,000, that's a lot of money. No matter who you are, $1,000, you'll take it. But when you get your check, what do? You take it, you put it in your wallet or your purse or whatever, and you go on. $1,000, but you go on. There's no surprise on Friday. You
Oh,
get the
yeah.
$1,000. But your boss comes up and your boss hands you a $1,000 check, and your boss says, you know what? You've been doing great. Here's another $100. $100? Oh my. You're thrilled over the 100, never mind the 1,000 you already got, which is 10 times more, another $100. Oh, that's great. That's reward prediction error. That's why it feels so glorious, even just
Oh,
a little bit better than what you expected. Now, here's where dopamine begins to wear you down. Let's say the next week your boss comes up and your boss says, you're doing really well again. Here's 1,000, here's 100. 100? I didn't expect that 2 weeks in a row. Wow, that's great. Third week happens. Your boss like, you're just doing so great. $1,000, $100. Oh boy, what a great thing. A month passes, continues to happen. You realize your boss is just giving you a raise. And 3 months later, here's a check for 1,000 and 100, and it's like, fine, wallet.
right.
There's no prediction error anymore.
Mm.
And the prediction error, when it's positive, that's that thrill that we get. And that's what causes dopamine to make you look forward to the Fridays. Oh boy, Friday's coming. Maybe I'll get it's happened in the past. It might happen again. If I don't have any reason to believe extra money's coming, I'm not going to sit here doing this. I'm going to go,
Yeah.
oh, paycheck's coming. And after a few weeks, when paycheck becomes normal, there's no reward prediction error anymore.
Right.
1,100
Yeah.
bucks. Thanks.
Yeah. And what happens when you don't get the $100?
when you don't get the $100, that's a different story. But it certainly is that it may be, oddly enough, the thing that kicks the dopamine thrill back in, because if several weeks go by and you don't get the
Mm,
$100 anymore, it's like
yeah.
maybe this week it'll come back. Maybe this
Yeah.
week it'll come back. And that is what we're doing, if I may make the jump. That's what we're doing when we're looking at scrolling things on the phone. Is at some point when we scroll, at various points we find something better than we expected. Doesn't
Right.
have to be spectacular. Remember, I said it doesn't take much. Doesn't take
Yeah.
much. But I found something in that scroll that I didn't expect that was better than expected. And once it's happened once, oh
Yeah.
boy, if it does, as long as it doesn't happen every time, there's always that variable opportunity. It could be better than last time. Maybe not, but maybe yes. And
Maybe
that
yes.
feeds us over and
Yeah,
over.
that's like the Instagram Reels or the TikTok where, and it's all about, and, as somebody who produces content to, promote the podcast and things, I take these classes and they're always talking about an element of surprise. And they're like, notice when you're scrolling, notice what catches your attention. And it's this surprise, this element of
You got it.
I guess the reward prediction error, but it's
Yes,
like something unexpected, something surprising. It doesn't always necessarily need to be positive either, something shocking. I think that's why negativity is so um, capturing, like it really just hooks you in, is that it's not what you expected. It invokes some frustration or anger sometimes. I know that's really what sometimes gets people engaged online, but it's just so interesting. Is being hooked with anger, is that also included? Is that a dopamine action?
we can draw a line from it,
Okay.
in the sense that if something is going to come up that's going to make me angry and I take some delight in that intensity of feeling, then we're
Mm,
talking about the delta, the change, still being positive in that I look forward to feeling angry. I look forward
interesting.
to feeling intrigued or provoked. And
Yeah.
that is just as much of a reward prediction error for a positive thing, because nobody seeks things that make them unhappy. We seek things that make us pleasurable. Why do we fight about politics? Because it's fun. And you
You
may
know,
not, you may say, well, I'm not enjoying this. Okay, then stop. Show me
yeah,
you can stop.
there's something about justifiable anger that makes people feel like in control or superior,
And that's a
I think.
different effect from dopamine. I think you're exactly right. I think you're
Yeah.
exactly right. But as I say, if we're going to draw a dopamine connection, it is a somewhat tenuous connection, as I think I've admitted.
Yeah.
It is different from saying, oh, I get a great deal of pleasure from battling people. There is a kind of
Yeah,
righteous
there's
joy to
there's
be
those
had.
people. Lord have
Yeah.
mercy. I don't like that at all. No, what's so interesting, talk about Andrew Huberman. He was sharing about a study that was done. I think maybe it was in the 60s. It was before ethics guidelines prevented this type of a mental experiment. He said they would drop they would drop probes into people's brains, and people could say which areas that they want stimulated. Like they had the choice; they could feel euphoria, pleasure, all these other things. He said that the one emotion people wanted stimulated the most was anger. I
Hmm.
thought that was so bizarre. But if you think about like politics and how people get into these arguments online. It's just interesting. There's something about us in our human nature that's really sort of drawn to this justifiable anger thing.
Well, I think this goes beyond the particulars of dopamine and more into theories of mind.
Mm,
We do want to have a purpose in life. The three big ideas in Viennese side where we got psychotherapy. The three big
mm.
ideas come from Sigmund Freud, and we come from
Yeah.
Freud, Adler, and Frankl.
Oh,
And
okay.
Freud's big idea, as most people know, is pleasure. We're driven by pleasure. We seek
Yeah.
pleasure.
Yeah.
And then his colleague and student Adler said, well, the thing we're actually looking for is power. That's what we want because we feel out of control.
Ah. Yeah.
And I think both of those things are true. Now, Frankl, you don't hear as much about Victor Frankl, who came a little after this. Victor Frankl said, what we really seek is meaning. Now, I
Meaning.
think all three of these individuals in these three schools have the right idea. And I think there's a balance between them. But the one that gets short shrift is Viktor Frankl's idea of
Yeah.
meaning. And that is what and I'll just take the opportunity to hold up the book shamelessly. This
I
is
love it.
this is what here's a poster of it right here.
Yeah,
The
you got
idea
both.
that
That's smart.
the thing Frankl pushed at was we need to have meaning, and if we don't have meaning, we're going to feel empty. And that
Mhm.
emptiness is one of the great tragedies that we fight against our whole lives. And so, in this book, and I say it not to push books. Do I want people to buy a book? Yeah, of course I do. But I want people to learn what I learned that made my life so much better
Yeah.
is that you can deal with the moment to moment dopamine problems and find a way out of them. Many,
Yeah.
many, many of your listeners and viewers know firsthand there's a way out,
Yeah.
but it's only an incomplete answer until there is meaning that unites it all. You're
Yeah.
trying to escape that awful feeling moment to moment. And let's say you do find a way to escape that feeling moment to moment. Days pass, years pass, and then you begin to ask yourself, what did it even add up to?
Yeah.
Did Was the thing I chose to do in the moment, did it matter? Did it make me feel like I mattered? Did I
Right.
do something that made a difference to other people?
Yeah.
And Viktor Frankl said, what we can do is find things to fill that moment to moment gap that also point towards some greater quality of meaning in the end. It's the same thing that we got from Aristotle. This is such an old idea. Aristotle said, in very simple terms, what do you like to do? What's fun? Now, what are you good at? Okay. Now look at those two lists and find where they cross. Of
Mm.
those things that you're good at and you like to do, Arlena, which of those advance something greater? What Aristotle called virtues. Does it advance uh, grace, kindness to other people? Does it advance knowledge? Does it advance justice? And I'm not talking about social justice. I'm just talking about
Right, right,
fair
right.
treatment, you
Sure.
know, equality, kindness for people. Um, if you can find a thing to do in the moment that you like, that you're good at, and that advances that, and it's not nearly as hard to do as it might sound. It's a matter of making lists and sitting alone for a few minutes. You can begin to craft the remedies in the moment to add up to something over time. And
Mm.
that's the great tragedy of Frankel's often overlooked ideas. And I hope I'm explaining it in a way that makes sense because I don't want people to get
Absolutely.
lost in this notion of, oh, it requires psychotherapy or it requires understanding deep philosophy. No, the purpose of these ideas is to make your life better. And by making your life better, I mean so you don't have to hurt. Look
Yeah.
me in the eye, whoever's watching this. You don't have to hurt. If you're hurting now, let's get that fixed. Don't
Yeah.
hurt another day.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And it's so interesting is in the realms of addiction recovery. Frankel's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is a book that comes up over and over and over again because
Good.
people that are suffering, I think, are naturally drawn to this idea of, how do I, like as you say, escape the empty feeling in the present moment, right? And I think that's maybe you can tell me if I'm thinking about this the right way, but that is sort of the motivation of dopamine is we're searching for something that's going to make us feel better, something to escape that, that empty feeling in the present moment. And so we are driven things by cravings and things like that. I did want to ask you, you say in the new book, Taming the Molecule of More, which is so practical and hits many of the areas that people in recovery face, because once we put down drugs and alcohol, then we're so tempted. There's this common phrase of switching addictions, right? So, so you put down the thing that is actually destroying your life. But we still have like this urge to escape the present moment and fill the void. And so you mentioned that there are tools that people can use. And one of the first ones I thought was so interesting. You and I both share this experience with GLP-1 medications.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a little I wouldn't say I really have a food thing, but I'm menopausal age and all of a sudden food is I'd never had a thing with food until I hit menopause and I'm like, I think about it a lot. Yeah, it's so funny. So tell me how the GLP-1s, what is the relation to dopamine and how do they reduce cravings?
Well, if I could tell you that, I would be fast at work on my scientific paper to explain it. I can
Ah,
tell you what we have observed.
okay,
Um,
that's
I,
good.
I can't tell you the mechanism exactly. Well, I can tell you part of the mechanism, but I encountered GLP-1s a couple of years ago. I've lost a lot of weight. I still look like a pretty big guy. You should have seen me before. I got on the scale. You know what it said? One at a time, please. One at a time. So.
Love me
Um,
a comedian.
so you've used the GLP-1 drugs.
I did,
You
yeah.
you have okay. And did you have a I'm tiptoeing around this. I don't want you to talk about what you don't want to talk about. Did you have an
I'm an
okay
open book.
experience? Did you have a profound experience? What was your time with it?
So the first time I tried it, I probably lost like maybe 20 pounds. And I tried semaglutide. I had a largely positive experience. Like it wasn't too hard on me. And then I waited maybe a year or two, maybe a year and a half and tried it again, but it made me sick the second time. Like I just couldn't tolerate it. So they put me on something different. And again, I didn't lose 20 pounds. I just wanted to lose like maybe 10 pounds or something because I didn't put on all the weight back. But, and that was better. And then I just recently tried it again and it did not, it seems like every time I step away from it and try it again, I don't have a positive experience. But what was so crazy is I just not like wasn't hungry and it didn't even occur. Like I have a sweet tooth and like not interested in sugar at all. Like it didn't even occur to me to want it. So I had like no craving. So it controlled my appetite and I wasn't craving things like sugar.
I'm so glad you said that because that is my experience only. My experience was turned up to 10, and I'll tell you about it. Um, I lost 60 pounds.
Oof.
And I have a lot more to go actually. But despite this wraith-like appearance, I'm actually pretty heavy. Um,
You can't really tell.
that's why I sit like this. So what I found was this. I'll just tell you the story
Okay.
of the first day I used this because you'll say, "Oh, I hear me in that when you hear it." Is I had a prescription for semaglutide. And you start at a low dose, as you know, very
Yeah.
low. And so I injected the semaglutide, and I had a meeting with a client that day, and he wanted to meet at this place called North Italia. I think it's a chain. It's an Italian place. I was very excited to go. It was a new place. I had barely tempted the menu, touched the menu at this point. So I get there about 3 hours after I took the injection. I talk about this in the book, and I got to order lunch, and I'm not hungry. Okay. Now, that's not a big surprise. You take that when you just said it yourself, the
Yeah.
hunger goes away.
Yeah.
But it was, I had to order something because it was going to be weird. And so I ordered a side as an entree, a plate of broccoli or something. And I sat there and ate that crap for I hate broccoli. I sat there and ate that while and picked at it and couldn't even finish a side of broccoli. Now let me tell you the thing that dawned on me in the days that followed. It was not just driven by I'm not hungry. It was I don't give a damn about food. And it
Yeah.
was the most surprising feeling I'd ever known. I mean, I've had horrible experience. I've dealt with mental illness and I've dealt with things that are very troubling. And I've had wonderful, happy times. And I'm doing well, but I had never felt this. If we were in the same town right now, and you said, "Hey, Mike, when this is over, let's go get a pizza." It doesn't matter. excuse me, if I just stepped out of a buffet, I would say, let's go get a pizza, Arlene. I dig me a pizza. Let's go.
Let's
Uh,
go.
and I love pizza. I'll eat pizza anytime. But when I was getting on this stuff and for a long time on it, if you said you want to get a pizza, my thought was, why would I want to do that?
So
It
weird.
turned off, like you talked about it as craving. For me, it turned off everything. Think of the thing you like to do the most, and then think about not even wanting it.
Yeah.
Um, for me, this is a real passion thing. I mean, I love to eat, and that's why my brother has had surgery, the gut surgery to reduce.
Oh,
And I said I'll never have it because it brings me such intense joy to eat. I couldn't stand not having those experiences, and I got
oh.
to have that experience with semaglutide. Uh, it was transformative. So now I realize I haven't answered your question about the GLP-1 effect on craving, but I'm getting up to it. But anyway, let me take a breath so you can respond.
No, I mean, I feel like, and I've seen studies where GLP-1s are reducing cravings for alcohol, like it's being used as a treatment for alcoholism, which I think is really interesting as well, because for people that are, 12-step programs are for people who are like desperate, like really desperate, and there's like a lot of other things that are available now, but I'm so glad that when I got sober 31 years ago, there was nothing else. And I actually was, in fact, pretty desperate to quit drinking. But I just can't help but wonder that if I was trying to get sober today, I might be thinking, oh, the GLP ones might be yeah, I have conflicted feelings. Part of me is like, because I'm a kind of an abstinence girl, but
Mhm.
I did 2 years of moderation before I was like, okay, I can't do moderation. But I think I have mixed feelings. I think for some people, if they're not far down on the spectrum of addiction, that it might be helpful and it would just reduce cravings. But for people that are really desperate, like it could also be useful for them because it becomes a matter of life or death, right? But I don't want to give people hope that they can do GLP-1s and drink alcohol because that's not my get down. But yeah, I just thought it was really interesting how the GLP-1s, like for me, putting down drugs and alcohol, a lot of people switch to sugar and it totally takes that away for me.
I believe I'm trying to think of exactly how I want to say this. No one should say, you know what, this is defeating cravings. And in fact, there are records, especially in the UK, of seeing other kinds of behaviors, especially compulsive behaviors like skin picking. We're seeing those
Oh,
things go away with people who take
interesting.
GLP-1s. But I don't want anybody in the sound of my voice to say, well, maybe the way for me to deal with my addiction is to start taking a GLP-1 drug. Don't try it. There's
Yeah.
no evidence that that is exactly what's going on. It's all anecdotal at this point. So
Okay. Thank
that
you.
it is what's possible in the future by
Mhm.
refining these compounds, by looking at the particular mechanisms of action where they're having right now. It's a gut biome reaction in part, we think.
Yeah.
Um, but GLP-1s are not the answer to addiction today, but they may be the key to nothing less than, I'll just say it, the end of addiction. They may
Uh,
be the key to the end of addiction with a lot of research between now and then. It's not
yeah.
going to help you today unless you just get lucky, but there is a lot of hope that this could be a profound drug for mental illness and for addiction.
Yeah, definitely a tool. What would you say are some of the other tools to help with things like cravings?
Well, I believe the most powerful tool of all is not chemical but psychological, and
Hmm.
and it is what there's a kind of therapy called ACT, and but it uses a concept many people have heard of, and I'll just mention it here. It is the concept of the observing self.
Hmm.
And that is we feel a stimulus and then we react. But there is a space between. For most of us, there's no space at all. It's like, ow, touch a hot stove, which is not a perfect example, but you pull back. But if somebody says, hey, screw you, they say that. And your first reaction is, oh, well, well, maybe. maybe instead of reacting, maybe we pause and say, how do I want to react to that? So it's the
Yeah.
same thing with the temptation, the craving for a compound, for a substance of some kind. And maybe we are going to give in, but before we give in, before we react, we stop and we observe what's going on. I have just felt the stimulation of this. I want it like hell. I want this so much.
Yeah.
What can I do? And how we spend that time in the observing self moment can begin to get us to a place where we can rely on even more things from technology, various physical practices, various emotional practices. So I believe the best place to begin is to just simply start recognizing, even if you're not getting better, quote unquote, to start recognizing, oh, that feeling is here. And what I'm due next is the reaction to it. Now you've sort of begun to drive a wedge between stimulation and reaction. And once that wedge is in there, you can begin to stretch it out and stretch it out. And you can even say, well, I'm going to spend 5 minutes thinking about what to do. Now, if you anticipate this, you can make a list of things that you might do instead. And now
Yeah.
you've made that list in advance. So now you have, oh, well, I could do this or this or this, the other. The more time you can create between stimulation and action,
Yeah.
the more likely it is you're going to choose something that's better for you, the thing that you want deeper in your heart that can
Right.
ultimately overpower the intense moment of craving. I am not saying this is easy. I'm not saying it's the answer to
Right.
everything. I'm saying it's a place to begin to take control of your mind and your heart.
No, I love that. Yeah, I actually printed this out. So, ACT sort of encompasses 6 skills, and I think we've covered the acceptance. Um, what is cognitive diffusion? Is that when you, instead of respond, by the way, that sounds like a Viktor Frankl between stimulus and response. There is a,
Mhm.
it's something like that as a Viktor Frankl quote
Yes,
in
yes.
there. But so the acceptance piece is sort of acknowledging that there is a feeling that is arising,
Right, right. I'm going to
right?
follow you in the book here. I'm just, wait, go ahead and talk. I'm just pulling up
Okay,
something in the book here.
I have them printed out. I have acceptance, cognitive diffusion,
Sure.
performing as the observing. A lot of this sounds like a lot of the concepts that are present in 12 step, living in the present, value identification, and committed action. I love your idea of creating a list because what I know for sure is that when there is sort of a trigger that happens, that people typically respond a certain way. And if we have a list of things of to do instead, like in 12 step, they say to call somebody, right? To call somebody, sometimes physical exercise or somatic practices, tapping, things like that can be helpful to sort of prolong that period between the stimulus and the response. I love that idea of list. Is that what cognitive diffusion is?
Cognitive diffusion is the moment you hit the wedge. That is
Okay.
when you split the the stimulation from the reaction. That is what
Okay.
opens the way. That's opening the door to the observing
Okay.
self. So
Okay.
cognitive diffusion is defusing, just like the word says, de or
Diffusing.
unfusing, putting together. Unfuse the instantaneous reaction to the stimulation. So
Yeah.
that's the two and three are very similar to each other, or they're very joined to each other because after that you engage in this conversation with the self, with the observing self.
Yeah. So the observing self is noticing that this is actually happening. It's sort of like taking a step back. You're acknowledging that there is something going on with you, like anger or sadness, something like
Mhm.
that. And then living in the present. Tell me a little more about living in the present.
Well, let me go back to this. I want to tie a neat little bow on
Oh,
cognitive
sure. Yeah.
diffusion and the observing self. Think of it this way: cognitive diffusion is yelling stop.
Okay.
Cognitive diffusion is I see it, stop. And the next step is this observing self. You're saying, now that I have stopped, how
Ah.
much time do I choose to look around, to think about what I might do, to find a distraction, even anything you choose is better than just reacting without thought. And
Mm-hmm.
every moment that you add to that observing self activity is another moment that you've resisted the thing you don't want to do. Um, and you mentioned this earlier, and it's so important. And I got to say, I talk about this all the time, but you're the first person who's really driven in on this. Is that
Yay.
you leave that craving is there, and if you don't answer the craving, that hole is empty,
Yeah.
and you can fill it with a lot of things, but if you don't fill it with something that points toward meaning on a consistent basis, Phil, I mean, once in a while it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go run around a block. Well, fine. But if you don't fill it consistently with something that points toward meaning, ultimately, best case, you're going to feel empty in the end and it's going to cease to work.
Yeah.
Worst case, you're going to fail. Why would you do something that doesn't contribute to your ultimate happiness along the way?
Yeah.
Um, why do people work at a job that they don't like for a long time? Well, because it fulfills some other quality of meaning. It allows them to support their family. It allows them to do other fun things elsewhere. Um, but if the moment-to-moment existence isn't, and that is discovered in the observing self holding court, if the moment to moment existence doesn't amount to anything, then why are we even here? I
Right.
mean, I if you'll indulge me, Arlena, with a little
Sure.
story here.
Yeah, yeah.
My best friend died when he was 39. It's been
Oh.
quite a while ago. He had diabetes when he was born. He made it so much further than he should have,
Mm.
and he died at 39. And the everybody loved my friend, my cousin, my college roommate, Kent. We all loved Kent. Still love him. Hard to talk about sometimes.
Yeah.
And at Kent's funeral, the pastor at the funeral said, "You may not remember everything you did with Kent." He said, "You're sitting here now and you're going, I really can't remember what we did. That's frustrating." And he
Yeah.
said, "That's okay because it happened." And Arlena, my thought was, what the hell does that even mean? What a dumb thing to say. I was really frustrated by this stupid thing that Pastor Chris White had said over in Western Kentucky. And as time passed, and as I learned more and more things, and especially as I work in this field, or my writing in this field, I should say, um, what he was getting at was this, and I'll bet you're so far ahead of me. We don't remember much about the moment to moment. We don't remember it. Like you and I tomorrow, you'll think back on this conversation, you won't remember the details of it. You'll remember that we had it, and you'll remember that we felt good, that it felt
Mhm.
good. But right now, I don't know about you. Yeah, I kind of do. This is wonderful. I
Yeah.
love this interaction. And in the moment, the intensity of the pleasure, that's not dopamine. That is in the moment pleasure that you and I are having right now, having this conversation, sharing information, discovering new things. This is wonderful, but we won't remember it. So this has to be enough. This has to be enough. And that's what
Yeah.
he was saying. When you were with Kent, it was enough in the moment.
It was
Take
enough.
that. You don't have to remember it. This moment is what we have.
Yeah.
That's where the cognitive diffusion opens the door. It says, stop, for heaven's sake, fill this moment with something better than emptiness.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is huge, this idea of enough, right? Because it's kind of the antidote to craving more, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
acknowledging the enoughness of the present moment.
Let me give you a quote that'll blow you away.
Okay.
Uh, when when Neil Armstrong came back from the moon, an interview, and this is a true quote, word for word. An interviewer said, "Well, you stood on the moon. My God, you stood on the moon. What's your reaction to that?" Here's what he said, word for word. "It was something we did. Now we should do something else." He missed the whole thing. Now later, he had a lot of problems, by the way. If you look up Neil Armstrong's story, it's not a happy story after he went to the moon.
Mhm.
Once
Yeah.
you've touched the sun or the moon
Right.
in this case, what are you going to do? Here is someone who was so caught up in the dopaminergic chase of what else can I do? And once he reached the
Um,
ultimate thing that a human being could do, which is go to another place beyond Earth, there was nothing left His reward prediction error was broken, Arlena.
Oh,
There was nothing more to do. What could surprise you more than I am now on the moon? Nothing
right.
could surprise you more than that. He broke it. He broke it.
Wow.
And his dopamine ruled his life. And he had to find a way back. He had to readjust his homeostasis to something other than, well, now it has to top going to the moon.
Yeah, that's wild. I mean, I see that, I'm from Silicon Valley, you see these entrepreneurs and these tech giants like do these great things and they're, like the billionaires they're it's never enough. Like they're always chasing more. It's like they're caught. And I think that's like the drug addict or the person that sex addiction, gambling addiction. It's like we're caught in this cycle of chasing. And it seems like the antidote is to like be in the present moment. And this is like these are concepts that are ancient, prayer, meditation, being in the present moment and a gratitude. These are like practices that sort of bolster this enoughness feeling in the present moment.
Yeah.
And so how do we balance out the dopamine? Listen, people are gonna have to get the book because I noticed there's tools to boost dopamine and tools that you talk about dopamine detox. How, if you're sort of caught, maybe the 6 skills is really the way to do this, but when is it appropriate to boost dopamine and when is it appropriate to sort of go through the dopamine detox?
Well, there's a whole lot in there I could pull on. We could do another hour on both those things separately. So let's talk about this idea. First, I want to clear up something because I was trained originally as a physicist. So I think in a very quantitative way.
Ah,
So let me clear up this notion about dopamine levels. You ready, everybody?
oh,
There's
okay.
no such thing, okay? There is no
Ah,
dopamine level. We talk about it, casually, but all the dopamine, there's dopamine in your bloodstream to be sure. It has
yeah.
nothing to do with what we're talking about. It has
Okay.
nothing to do with that. Dopamine, there are three dopamine systems, and one of them has to do with motion. That's why if you Google dopamine, you're going to get a lot of hits on
Um,
Parkinson's disease. It's
oh,
related to one dopamine system that you and I are not discussing right now. We're talking
okay.
about what we'll call the desire and control system. Now, the dopamine that affects all the stuff we're talking about right here in between your ears. All the dopamine that's in your body is in your head right now that applies to behavior. And it's not
Okay.
flowing around like it's a big pool of dopamine. You can't do a blood test and get a dopamine level test. The
Interesting.
dopamine that you have is not just in your brain, it's in particular circuits.
Yeah.
And it moves down this dendrite to the other end of the molecule. Well, I'm being a little casual myself now, but the point is that what we're talking about is less an amount of dopamine and more an amount of dopaminergic activity at the end of a neuron.
Okay.
So if you think of a popcorn popper and
Mhm.
and you're looking at it on a popcorn popper or a hot plate and you got popcorn on there and you see it pops up in the air and it pops up in the air, that's how a dopamine molecule interacts with your system. It touches a little receptor down there on the hot plate and it
Mhm.
falls out and it hits it again and it falls out. And every
Mhm.
time it hits it, that's stimulation. And so if
Okay.
you have a dopamine problem of too little dopamine, it's because it doesn't hit very often, then it gets washed out of the circuit. Or there aren't enough dopamine molecules to make enough contacts, or there's something blocking those receptors, or there aren't enough receptors. It can be a lot of things. So when you talk about dopamine activity, we're talking about dopamine or levels, we're talking about dopamine activity. So we really don't have a way. You could drink you a big old glass of dopamine right now, and it would do nothing for your attitude. It might make your stomach hurt, but it's not going to do anything for your attitude because it can't even get into your brain, Arlena. There's something called the blood-brain barrier that
Mhm.
surrounds all this. And the molecule of more, which is dopamine, is too big to get through. It's too polarized to get through. And there's a guy with a velvet rope going, sorry, we're closed. You can't, the only way to get it into your brain, well, the main way we can get it into your brain is to inject it into your spinal column and shoot it up that way. And it
Wow.
acts so briefly in your brain that you'd have to basically walk around and you couldn't walk around because it'd break your system. Anyway, I'm giving people more detail than they want, I'm sure. But to me, it's important to understand that dopamine is not like insulin where you inject it and you go on, or
Okay.
GLP-1s where you insulin. What we're talking about is a system inside your brain that is very susceptible to behavior.
Behavior.
So what we want to do is learn to deal with the system we have and make
Mhm.
up for its deficiencies in other ways. If you want to do a dopamine fast, there are two things to note. One is that you don't really want to do without dopamine. That's like saying, "Well, I have a blood disease. I think I'll get rid of all my blood." No, we couldn't carry on from
Couldn't
moment to moment
function.
without dopamine. And what we and the second thing we want to know is that. Uh, and this is the most practical part, is if you're going to try to do a so-called dopamine fast, which is eliminating dopaminergic activities in the hope to reset normal or homeostasis,
Mhm.
if we like. What you want to be sure you're doing is when you get rid of the dopaminergic stuff, you're replacing it with here and now stuff. Otherwise, you're just saying, here's a hole, here's another empty hole, here's another empty hole. That's just going to make you worse off. So
Yeah.
if you're going to say, I'm not going to deal with, I'm not going to get on my phone today. I'm going to set
Right.
aside my phone. That's what a lot of people do when they talk about a dopamine
That's the
fast.
first thing I thought of was like, oh,
Yeah,
stop scrolling social media for
yeah.
a day
So
or
I'm going to,
two.
or turn off social media, even that, just that.
Yeah.
Well, and then what? And then what? Oh,
Yeah.
now you've just created a problem that dopamine might not have been fixing it very well, but it was fixed by golly. You at least had something to do.
Right.
But now you've got this craving. It's like, well, hell. Now what do I do? Well, you need to have
Ah,
something there. And think of something creative. Get yourself a notebook and draw pictures for heaven's sake. Look out the window and draw your car. Call your buddy and say, let's go bowling. Go walk
uh-huh.
around the block. Do something. Find
Okay.
something in the here and now to make you feel with your five
Um,
senses. And
yeah.
if it can be something constructive, and best of all, it can be something that gives to other people.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying go to the soup kitchen and do your duty. Well, that's a nice thing to do, but it doesn't have to be that. You know, if you're to go back to this thing about filling the gap with something that matters, that you love to do, you're good at, and helps other
Yeah.
people, you know who I always think of is the lunch lady. I'm an old guy, so I remember the lunch lady. And you don't want the lunch from the angry lunch lady. You want the lunch lady. You want the lunch from the happy lunch lady. She's glooping it on a plate and hands it to you. Oh man, this is good stuff. And she's like, "You have a good day, Michael. You have a good day, Mr. Mike." And it's like she is living the life you're supposed to live, man. She loves
Yeah.
what she does. She's good at cooking, and she's making a difference in that little kid's life with
Yeah.
nothing more than a smile and a hello. That's what I'm talking about when I say your stuff has to mean something to other people. It has to mean something to yourself. It's not, I shall now fix the federal budget. I shall now change the government. No, just take care of your neighbors for God's sake. Start in your
Yeah.
community. Start with your friends and family and self. If we all did that, we wouldn't have as big a problem in the first place.
My goodness, that is the truth. Yeah, yeah. A sufficient substitute is something, an idea that you hear in 12-step meetings a lot is we need a sufficient substitute. And what I like about so convenient about 12-step is that they talk about service so that you can, after you go through the steps, you can take somebody else through the steps, you can set up meetings, you can run them, you can participate and help. And there's no shortage of people who need help at 12-step meetings. So you,
Well,
you
yeah,
can be of
12 step
service.
is 12 step comes back again and again to this idea of we're going to get rid of this reaction to this craving.
Yeah.
And now let's make certain that the thing we replace it with is not, as you said early on, let's not switch one addiction for another. Let's switch it for
Yeah.
meaning. Let's switch it for something
Meaning.
that's real joy.
Yeah. I feel like that's going to be the big takeaway from this, is, escaping the empty feeling is by creating meaning, filling the gap with what's fun and what we're good at. I love that. The virtues. Well, listen, I told you I was real good at shutting off at right about an hour, and here we are. My brain's like, okay, girls, time to go. But listen, I'm so excited for people to get this book. I really love the 6 skills that you presented. There were so many really profound ideas. I really like the first book as it gives context and perspectives. There's something about understanding the mechanics of it, that sort of depersonalizes it for people like me that have like guilt and shame attached to addiction issues, right? There's something about understanding the science that depersonalizes it that makes it easier to
Mhm.
accept. But I really love this book, The Taming of the Molecular War, because there's so many practical ideas that really expand on the first book. But I am a very practical, pragmatic person. So I love something that I can sink my teeth into and take action on, right? It's information alone is not helpful, really. Self-knowledge avails us nothing, as they say. But what do I do instead
Yeah.
becomes the big question. So how to feel better and change my behavior. So, man, so I want to encourage everyone to get the book. There was so much that we didn't get a chance to cover. Um, but it was such a pleasure to hang out with you and get to know you a little
Yeah.
bit. And thank you so much for writing these two books. Super helpful.
Well, my pleasure. And let me just throw in something else here, and that is, I feel like you have an important audience that can benefit from a lot of these things.
Yeah.
And if you go to tamingthemolecule.com, you'll
Okay.
find I'll zoom into your book club. If you have a book club and you can go and see how this works at the website tamingthemolecule.com, and several of you buy the book, I will zoom in and join your book club, and we can talk about this with your particular things. Because, I'm a writer. I write for a living, but
Yeah.
once in a while you run into something that seems to have made a difference in people's lives. And this seems to be helping. I'm not taking credit for it. I give so much credit to my co-author on the first book, Dr. Dan Lieberman. But I really want people to know you don't have to hurt. I know what it is to hurt. You know what it is to hurt. Come on, let's help each other.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's really beautiful. I think we'll leave it there. But again, thanks so much for joining me. And I'm gonna leave links to everything in the show notes. If you're driving and you don't have a chance to jot this down, be sure to visit odatchat.com and look at your episode. We'll have all the links to everything. But again, thank you so much for joining me today. It was such a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.